All right, the All-Star reserves are going to be announced on Thursday, and certainly here in Philadelphia, Joel Embiid announced the starter just last week, and the reserves announced tomorrow, which is, February 1st, which is already here. It's in February already. How about that? And with that, we wanted to give hours before, because we don't have another full show. Tomorrow we'll be doing post-game after the announcement is already made. Sixers play tomorrow night. We'll be doing our post-game, of course. So with it, we wanted to give hours before they were announced. So you wanted to start off, Kyle, and give your...
Oh, I got to go first? Am I going to make people mad on the internet again? Because it seems like I have a real knack for that.
Well, you might as well keep it going, man.
Days.
You might as well keep it going. You want to start with the East?
I'll start with the East. All right. So the easy ones for me were Jalen Brunson and Tyrese. I think Brunson is about as ironclad of a case as you can get at this point. Been the key guy there. Knicks have been awesome. Numbers are unassailable. Great. Tyrese, I probably don't have to sit here and make the all-star case for Tyrese Maxey. I will say, was a little bit tougher as the shooting numbers have gone down and he's gone through some struggles, but I think body of work at this point, between the volume, efficiency, all that, like, still pretty damn good.
But just on pure numbers, Trey is having a better season.
Yeah.
It's just one player wins
that's
games
factoring in, like, I'll spoil it. I did not have Trey Young in my reserves. A lot of that for the reason that, like, look, Trey's been great on an individual level, but I think the lack of team success is in some ways about him. I'm not saying that he's got a perfect team or that they couldn't upgrade the team in some ways so that it's more of a perfect Trey fit to win more games, but I think you can connect a lot of dots there. So Brunson and Maxey were the first two as far as the backcourt guys. I went with Jaylen Brown, Paolo Banchero, and Julius Randle. So we got two Knicks in there somehow. Those are my front court guys. And I went with Donovan Mitchell, who historically I have not been a huge fan of his for various reasons, like big producer, all that, but has his warts. Think he deserves a ton of credit for helping to keep that team afloat as they've lost those important guys we talked about earlier. And the last one I was really split on between Trey Young and Bam Adebayo. Threw a big guy in there. Just said, give me Bam. I like Bam a lot. Think he's an awesome playoff guy specifically, although you could certainly point at the Heat's recent skid and say, not exactly a banner year for Miami. Western Conference, a little bit easier. Went with Steph Curry, who him getting bounced out of the starters was surprising, but speaks to the year Shea is having. Mm-hmm. Devin Booker, Kawhi, Paul George, which, by the way, start paying attention to that Clippers team if you are not already, because they have been on an absolute heater. Anthony Davis, didn't feel great about him as the final front court guy because, let's be honest, guys, the Lakers having two All-Stars with the state they're in right now, a little bit ridiculous, but just good enough team-wise, and the production's obviously been there. And the West wild cards, I went with Anthony Edwards, awesome season, team and individual level, and De'Aaron Fox, who I feel like deserves a lot more love than he probably gets. Jamal Murray was probably the toughest cut there, although I would say because he missed time with injuries and because he's more of a shows up in big games, but the night to night is not quite there. That's why I landed on Fox and Edwards in those final two. So that's all I got.
What you got, Derek?
I don't think I have anything materially different. The only thing I would say is that if I was voting for starters, and the starters have already been announced, but if I was listing my starters, I would have had Brunson as a first-team starter over Dame.
I agree.
And then I would have had Maxey, Mitchell, and Dame. Dame would have been sort of like my wild card, which is wild to say that he is a wild card. But I would have had Maxey and Mitchell. Mitchell, I mean, the Cavs looked like they were dead in the water with all those injuries. And for them to be basically meeting our preseason expectations despite what they have gone through, Mitchell deserves a lot of that credit there. He's certainly making it. I did also have Bam on there. That wavered, certainly if this was a month ago, that would have been an easy selection.
Right, when you lose 7 games in a row right before.
Wavers you a little bit. Yeah, for sure. But he has been an excellent two-way player. And really, I don't like looking at it positionally, but it does seem like another big man on there would have been worthwhile. I don't love Julius Randle's game, but it's hard to deny the season he's having. And more importantly, it's hard to deny the team. I do factor a team success into this. Like Kyle, I don't have Trey on my all-star team. Part of that's because there's just so much incredible depth. And you do, like, positions don't matter, but starters are 2 guards, reserves are 2 guards, and you get 2 wild cards. there's just 5 guards who I think are having a better season when you look at both sides of the ball. It is tough for me to leave off Trey because the numbers are astounding. He's had a really good individual season, but he is a part of that defensively. And I did have Banchero in there as well. So I don't really have too much of a difference there. And I think my 7 reserves in the West were the same as Kyle too. So that's a boring show.
Not too boring when you get to mine. Because I'll change things up a little bit. In the East, it was pretty easy. And like the guys talked about, and the Damian Lillard piece threw a lot of stuff off with him being voted in by the fans as a starter because Jalen Brunson deserved that spot. So he's an easy lock. Tyrese Maxey, again, easy lock, despite the fact that he had those struggles at times, but then he picked it up again. Jaylen Brown was also pretty easy when you have a top seed. Typically, you get 2 guys in there. And while he's had better seasons, he's still been all-star worthy with his play this year. So Jaylen Brown, Bam Adebayo, Miami, and their struggles, he's a part of it, but his season overall has been too good to ignore. And when you don't have a lot of other front court guys and big guys there, you have to factor that part in, that you're going to probably have to have some big in there some way, somehow. So go there. Paolo Banchero as well with these guys, Donovan Mitchell and Julius Randle. Julius Randle injured right now with that shoulder injury, so most likely won't play. So as we talk about Trae Young not being on any of our teams, he might be an injury replacement just because.
And I think he would be the next one up for me. And quite frankly, like I wavered on Bam and almost put Trae on there ahead of him. Like there is a point where it's just so excellent individually that I have to consider it.
I'm actually curious what the coaches will.
Yeah.
Because that's an interesting. I'm always like, certainly if you're talking about, you go into a game, they think about who do I have to game plan for. Trae is higher on the list, at least like the defensive game plan they set, than Bam. Like that's undeniable, right? Or somebody like Bam. I would say I don't want to pick on Bam specifically, but he's like, I'd say he's probably the most fringe guy of the guys that are listed. So they look at that, but then they also say, well, that guy is a turnstile on defense and he's not useful off ball, and it's part of why the DeJounte thing doesn't work. So it's kind of an interesting look into how coaches think about the game and how they think about All-Star.
But what's interesting about that? Because he was great last year and they left him off again. So they value, while the same game planning happened a year ago, that's happening right now, and they did not select him. And it's because the team was bad and all the other things that go. The guy averages a double-double, and they're like, yeah, you're perfect for this game. This is what we want on the Sunday night to attract the fans. And he has a bunch of fans that love him, but they value something enough where they left him off last season, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happened again tomorrow night. Interesting thought from someone there. Neil says one of the guys, Derek White, was talked about a lot leading up to this because of his two-way play, how he's been fantastic this year.
Great.
But just may not make the cut. He might be an injury replacement, especially, let's say, if Embiid can't even go and they have to find ways to do something there. Maybe, but as good as he has been, just didn't crack it for any of us. Doesn't mean that he hasn't been good enough.
Yeah.
But just didn't crack it.
And it's tough because there's a lot of really good Celtics players. I don't know if you noticed, but they're a really good team. Like Porzingis has been crucial for them too. But I already have 2 Celtics on there. It's tough for me to give a third spot to the group. And I think he is one of the best role players in the best situations in the league. I don't even like calling him a role player. But non-stars, he is one of the best in his role. But there's only
those
12 of these
I spent
spots.
basically all last season talking about Derek White and how he's looked great last year, and he's been at a different level this year. Yeah. On top of what you're saying, like also, this is not disrespecting Derek White at all. He's been a big contributor to winning. He's not the sort of player that people watch All-Star games for. Like, that would be honestly another reason. Like, people shit on the fans for how they vote and like, oh, this guy got this much love compared to this guy who's having a better year objectively and all that. Like, part of the reason you would put Trae Young in an All-Star game is like Trae Young will make it more entertaining to be in the game. He will throw a half-court lob to somebody on the money, will cross somebody over, he'll take a ridiculous 3. Right. Yeah, like that's a guy who I don't really enjoy the All-Star game as a general concept. Like the All-Star game is just not for me the way the basketball is played. And Derek White is just not a all-star game type guy.
But we
that
have
does
seen
not
those guys get
devalue what
rewarded.
he has done this year.
We have seen those guys get rewarded in the past, though.
Sure. Yeah.
Andre Kirilenko and Chris Gatling making all-star teams where you're like, what? I don't want to watch him. And let's just go to my West Point, where the only one that we differed on is I went Rudy Gobert because they had the number one defense in the NBA. He's the anchor of it.
Sure.
And they're the number one seed in the West. So with Rudy Gobert, he is not fit for the All-Star game at all. But because of their defense, because of him being who he is, his reputation, he's probably, in my opinion, I put him on my West reserves. And I agree with the guys on everyone else. I even thought about Karl Anthony Towns because of the number one seed part and his scoring ability and what he has done as the number two scorer on that team. But I went with the defense of Rudy Gobert. So, Kyle, to your point again, yeah, I don't want to watch him in the All-Star game. They don't want to pass it to him.
He's made a gigantic impact on that team, right? Like,
right.
I will put my hand up and say, like, I mocked the Timberwolves, 1, for the trade, but 2, how they looked most of last year. It was easy to say. They colossally screwed up, and now they're like, they are rolling. They have been really, really good. So
it was a bad trade in the fact they paid significantly over what anyone else would have paid, but they have gotten materially better. It is possible to both win and lose at the same time, which is weird, but now that they're coming up against a tax bill, different conversations. We're not a Wolves podcast. To your point, you just brought up Kirilenko. He didn't play that long ago, but he's one of those players where I just feel like if he played today, people would love him a lot more because of that defensive versatility. Yeah. He would have been a monster in what coaches and GMs value today. And also, I think if given enough reps, he would have become a better shooter too, because he had that kind of touch where I think he could have grown that. He would have been incredible.
You think he could defend 1 through 5?
Really could have.
Yeah. Yep, with that length.
Did he ever get a 5x5? I don't think he ever got a 5x5.
I think he came close, but I don't know if he ever. But you bring up the 1 through 5. He like genuinely could in today's NBA. Most of the guys who are said, oh, they can defend 1 through 5 might be able to defend 3 positions.
Yeah,
like
2
it's
through
one
4.
of one of the most misleading labels in the league currently, and it drives me.
And that's
crazy.
why you ask it about him.
Yeah,
because you saw it then.
Someone like Bam, I think is one of maybe 3 to 5, even 5 might be a lot. He's probably like 3 guys. OG and Bam are the 2 that jump out.
Who's the third?
After that, it's like
maybe
Draymond
used to be.
At times.
Used to be.
But even then, it's like, to your point, he's now older. I don't trust him as much on the smaller guards. Now, if you're talking about the 3 through 5 versatility and his off-ball utility, like the brilliance with Draymond is less like he's a 1 through 5 defender than he's a smaller, at least shorter guy who can defend 5s. But if you watch him quarterback the defense and point guys out and like literally push and pull guys into the right positions, that's the beauty of what Draymond has done. Like, set aside the BS from this year where he's, screwing everything up and acting like a hothead, even more so than usual. The basketball IQ there is absolutely off the charts. So I wouldn't call him 1 through 5, but he's, at least at his peak, he was absolutely one of the most important and impactful defenders in the league.
We all silly like the mayor.